Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Feed Zone. This is your one-stop shop for all things fantasy cycling. Now, today, to kick things off, the first episode, we are just going to focus on strategy. So, a bit high level, what does it mean to play fantasy cycling? What are the kinds of things that you might want to look at? How might you want to prepare? Some of you might have already played the Tour de France fantasy through Fantasy by Tissot. It's going to be the same setup and platform for the Vuelta. So that keeps things nice and simple. We're fortunate where now we have both the Tour as well as the Vuelta running on Fantasy by Tissot. So the same platform, the same scoring, the same overall strategy and approach. So we're going to focus on that. We will do a Giro episode in April, May next year. But to get things started, we're just going to focus on Fantasy by Tissot. Hopefully some of you have played that via Tour de France fantasy or are preparing to do the La Vuelta on Fantasy by Tissot as well. So without further ado, let's dive in. We're going to focus on the strategy, the overall scoring, what you might want to look at when it comes to setting your fantasy team ahead of the Vuelta, and then we'll go from there. When it comes to fantasy strategy, your main focus is on stage winners as well as jersey wearers. Now, your big focus there is that a stage win within the Fantasy by Tissot platform gets you about 200 points, and it goes down from there. First is worth 200 points, second is worth 150, third is worth 120, and thereon. There are also points awarded throughout the stage for the intermediate sprint, as well as KOM points for mountains classifications. The most combative rider for each stage also gets points, and a sneaky but really effective way to score points in fantasy is by kilometers covered in the breakaway group. So those are your main categories: stage position, intermediate sprint, KOM, combative rider, as well as kilometers covered in the breakaway. So when you're thinking about establishing your team, it's really important to get this right from stage one. Now, you have to keep in mind that you're looking for these stage winners, or at least those that are going to perform well in each stage. But you also need to think about who's actually going to be wearing these jerseys overall, because points are awarded for the jersey holders at the end of each stage. So if you are in the leader's jersey, for example, you'll be scoring 50 points at the end of the stage. Your green jersey's 30, polka dots 30, youngest rider white jersey is 20, and the super combative for that stage is 90. So when you put the two together, you're essentially targeting stage winners and also jersey holders. That's your ultimate goal. Now, that seems fairly simple. In practice, it can be fairly difficult to get this right. What you tend to see by the end of the tour is a lot of teams have pretty similar makeups, because what has happened is the best riders, the cream has risen to the top. We all know who the winning riders are. We all know who's wearing the jerseys. And you start to see a little bit of parity amongst the team selections. But there is a real opportunity at the start of the race to make a lot of gains on your opponents. So we'll talk about that a little bit and also talk about just in general how to set the team. We won't be setting an actual team today. The second episode of the podcast is going to focus on how to actually set your own team. And I'll do a bit of a how-to on how to set your team, which should make things a little bit simpler in terms of what to look out for, some of the pitfalls of trying to overload your team too early, some of the riskier strategies you can undertake that might get you off to a better start, but do kind of throw you out when it comes to the amount of credits that might be involved in that. But we'll get to that in a second. So first and foremost, now that we know our main focus is stage winners as well as jersey holders, we now need to think about the makeup of our team. Before you ever set your team, you have a budget of 120 stars. Each rider is essentially categorized with a star quantity. So your best riders cost more stars than your lower riders, or riders who might be domestiques aren't necessarily in it for the win. So a good example, Jonas Vingegaard is the most expensive rider on the mix. You can get him for 25 stars. Mads Pedersen as a sprinter, an overall stage winner, he's 23 stars. Tom Pidcock, he's 21 stars. Richard Carapaz, he's 21 stars. Ben O'Connor's 20, etc., and so forth. This star total is important. The other thing that is important is you can only have 3 riders per category except for all-rounders. You can have as many all-rounders as you like, but you can only have 3 riders per category. So 3 leaders, 3 sprinters, 3 climbers, etc. So you do need to factor that into your overall mix. Now, the additional piece that you need to keep in mind here is you only have 400 credits total. So what that translates to is 50 credits per transfer, so essentially 8 transfers. That means across the entirety of the Vuelta or the entirety of the Tour, you can only transfer a rider out and a rider in 8 times. So setting your team from the start is somewhat important because you want to be limiting your transfers as much as you can, but you also want to have a bit of flex to maximize your ability to make points on each stage. I now want to talk about essentially what I use as my toolkit. When it comes to establishing your team, there are a number of different metrics you want to look at, but I have landed on this as a pretty good mix of ways in which to prepare ahead of the Tour. The first one is actually a hat tip to a fantastic website, magazine, overall journalistic enterprise and media approach, which is Ruler. Ruler does some incredible articles. They've got some incredible photographers. It's a great way to follow cycling in general, but I do find them specifically helpful when it comes to fantasy cycling. Ruler does a great preview of each stage. So you'll be looking at the stage itself, but also who they think the potential winning riders will be. The only thing that I would call out is they usually release those the day before the stage. So you can't use that in your pre-race preparation, but you can use it during just to kind of check your general approach and what you think might make sense. The other 2 things I would recommend, or other 2 approaches that I would recommend as having as part of your toolkit, are the actual, say, Vuelta website and looking at the stage previews in terms of overall what the makeup of the stage is. Is it a flat stage? Is it a mountain stage? Is it a time trial? If it is a mountain stage, how big of a mountain stage is it? Are we talking all category, massive climbs where only the GC guys are going to be part of the mix? Or are we talking, some rolling category 1, maybe category 2, but there's a chance the break might get away? These are the kinds of things you want to be looking ahead to when it comes to setting your team and understanding where it is that you want to make your transfers. You can do that on the Vuelta or the Tour de France website itself. I like using Pro Cycling Stats. They've got some great stage previews, plus it's easy to have that tab open as its own part of your toolkit. And then the last part of the toolkit, there's one other bit, but I'll only mention it in passing because it is sense offline. But the other part of the toolkit that I like to use is an Excel spreadsheet. So essentially just breaking down stage by stage, what date is the stage, how many stars have you got banked, who are you planning to transfer in, kind of having a bit of a plan lined up, but you may not end up using it, but it's nice to have a bit of a plan ahead of time so you can at least see where you're going to be, how many stars you're going to have left, and adapt as you go. So that's actually something, the Fantasy Transfer Tracker spreadsheet, that I will put in the show description so that you've got that easy to hand and can use during your own Vuelta as well. Has the rest days in there and can actually calculate for you what's going to happen to your overall star mix and transfer count as you move through each of these stages. The one that I was going to mention, which was super handy in preparation for the Tour, but which has since gone offline, is a fantasy amalgamator by, I believe, a guy called Marek Sulik. It is since no longer available. I hope it comes back. But an incredibly good way of combining recent race stats from Pro Cycling Stats along with star budgets to essentially look at where some value picks will be. So Marek Sulik, if you listen to this and you are thinking about bringing back the platform, please do. Super valuable for the tour, no longer available for the Vuelta. So we'll put that off to the side for the time being. But yes, hopefully that comes back because it was super, super handy. The Vuelta is a lot of up and down. We're looking at 2 flat stages into a medium mountain stage by 2. We then do a team time trial. We're then talking mountains. We then go flat. We then go hilly with an uphill arrival. There's a lot of chopping and changing. So that's going to make your fantasy strategy a little bit tougher, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. It's just going to be critical to figure out where to place your 8 transfers across and certainly adjust to see where the form is as the race begins. So, as I say, we won't go into rider picks right now, but at a high level, if I was to summarize my thinking on how to set a team ahead of this, I'd be wanting probably 2 solid sprinters ahead of the flat stages, the 2 flat stages to start, but with an eye towards your lighter sprinters that are going to be able to finish on that uphill finale. So more of your rouleurs or punchy climbers that have a great sprint, they might try and go a long range attack and get away. So be keeping that in mind when you're picking that sprint category within your team. You also want to have at least 2 of your GC considerations in the mix to be well-rounded. We're going into medium mountains across to stage 3 and 4, and in the team time trial, the GC favourites are going to want to be putting in a big dig. So makes sense to be carrying 2 of those, get those locked, tuck them away, and be set for essentially the rest of the tour. And after that team time trial, we're into the mountains. So really from there on out, we're GC focused. We have a sprint and a few stages in the mix there in terms of medium mountains, flat, hilly, uphill, that are going to be about having some breakaway riders and kind of taking a flyer on a few of those. So again, we'll do a bit of a focus on the 7 to 9 star category riders when we do our team picks, so we can have a bit more of a look through on that. All right. Now we've done a bit of an overview of strategy and general approach to team selection. I now wanted to give you a look ahead for what to expect for the rest of the Vuelta. So, as I say, episode 2 will do a bit of a how-to for anyone picking their team late or who isn't comfortable kind of setting their team and a general approach in terms of specific rider selections. We will also be doing a number of episodes throughout the Vuelta where we'll recap some of the stages and look at the fantasy outcomes based on predictions. I'll talk you through a bit in episode 2 how I've gone about picking the riders that I have and then how they've performed through some of those early stages. And I think that'll start to make it a bit clearer how the strategy flows out. We'll also have some guest segments. So some mates of mine that love cycling just as much as I do, some that know what they're talking about, some that have literally zero idea. And they'll be coming onto the podcast to talk about the Vuelta itself, what we've seen in terms of riders and implications for the fantasy side as well. And bringing in some special stuff as well that we'll get to in later episodes, but I don't want to reveal a bit too much just now. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check out the Excel spreadsheet, which I am going to drop into the show notes. Give us a like, subscribe if you want to stay up to date and hit the bell there in terms of keeping on top of the latest episodes. We'll be back in a couple of days for a bit of a how-to on how to set your fantasy team ahead of the Vuelta. Until then, thanks for listening. This has been the Fantasy Feed Zone. We'll see you next episode.